Hi, it's Dennis Daly. Nice to have you along on All Week Theater, where we take a classic radio episode and play it out over 5 days. Due to the feedback we got when we presented the CBS program You Are There, covering the assassination of Abraham Lincoln using real CBS News correspondents, here's another 5-part presentation as You Are There went to the Salem Witch Trials.
This is John Daly in the Salem Court of Massachusetts Bay Province. The recess in the witchcraft trial of 71-year-old Rebecca Norse, which started at 10 o'clock in the morning of this 29th day of June, 1692, is just about over, and the trial should soon resume. As you know, Rebecca Norse, great-grandmother and mother of 8, whose husband owns a 300-acre farm not far from the Crane River Bridge, went on trial this morning as a witch. The penalty for witchcraft is death. This courthouse on Townhouse Lane is jammed to the rafters.
Salem, Massachusetts, June 1692. CBS is there.
A Salem court tries a woman as a witch. CBS invites you to believe that our microphone is there waiting for the verdict. All things are as they were then, except for one thing.
CBS is there.
This broadcast, the fourth in a special summer series produced and directed for Columbia by Robert Louis Cheon, is based on authentic historical fact and quotation. And now,
Salem, June 29th, 1692, and John Daly.
Tell them how this trial is progressing. The tension with which this day opened here in Salem has grown greater, if possible. In this trial, second in the biggest roundup of suspects these colonies have ever seen, 2 key witnesses for the prosecution this morning testified that the defendant, Rebecca Norse, was responsible for fits, seizures, and the unnatural torment which have been plaguing a dozen or so Salem girls for the last few months. Another woman named by these girls, Bridget Bishop, has already been hanged and waiting in jail at this very moment to be tried by this same court on these same charges of witchcraft are 150 local residents who were seized in their homes in nearby Lynn, Topsfield, Marblehead, Amesbury, Andover, Wells, as well as Salem, and as far off as Boston. This morning, a prosecution witness, the Reverend Mr. Samuel Parris, minister of Salem Village, testified that the alleged unnatural activities of Rebecca Norse against the afflicted children are actually part of a much larger plot against the government. Is that correct, Mr. Parris?
If that plot had not been discovered, the plotters would soon have succeeded in sinking this government.
On the stand this morning, Mr. Parris, you spoke of proof.
They have been holding meetings, sir. They have been holding meetings and plotting to root out the Christian religion from this country.
I see. You said, too, that they were prepared to blow up all the churches and wreck our government.
And set up instead their own diabolism.
So, well, I'm told, sir, that before you came to this church, you were a merchant in the Barbados Isles.
I gave up commerce for the ministry.
You brought back with you some slaves, sir.
2.
Is it true, Mr. Parris, that there has been a dispute going on between you and members of your congregation as to what were the terms of your salary agreed upon 2.5 years ago?
When I accepted the call to this parish 2 years and 7 months ago, my salary was clearly determined.
But there is a dispute, isn't there, as to whether it gives you permanent ownership of the parsonage or merely the use of the ministry and the pasture.
The salary for my services includes full and permanent ownership of the parsonage and surrounding grounds. Those who have disputed it are simply not in possession of the facts.
I see, but is the prisoner's husband, is Francis Norse, among those who have disputed your claim to permanent ownership, Mr. Parris?
Francis Norse is not in possession of the facts.
Just one more question, Mr. Parris. About the committee charged with furnishing you with firewood last November, when you tried to have them brought to law.
The committee had stubbornly and for a long time been derelict in its duty to furnish the parsonage with firewood.
But it was argued then that an extra sum had been added to your annual salary to compensate you for finding your own firewood.
But that
Mr. Parris, Rebecca Norse's husband, the husband of the woman against whom you testified this morning, is on the firewood committee, is he not?
Rebecca Norse has been plotting the destruction of our government.
Thank you very much, Reverend Samuel Parris. Also on the stand this morning, we heard Dr. William Griggs, village physician, testify that a number of his patients had been bewitched. Dr. Griggs, You said that you yourself had seen evidence of their unnatural affliction.
I saw the ministers, the Reverend Mr. Parris's own niece, try to fly up the chimney.
You described how she was picked up by an unseen force.
An unseen force hurled her through the room so that she flew from wall to wall. Then she began to show every evidence of starting to fly, stretching up her arms as high as she could and crying, "Wish, wish, wish."
This morning, Dr. Griggs, you testified that the girls were under the baleful influence of an evil eye. Now, speaking as a medical man, what is the explanation of the evil eye?
When a witch turns her evil eye on a subject, an invisible and impalpable fluid darts from the eye of the witch and penetrates the brain of the bewitched. From then on, the witch can do with the bewitched as she pleases.
Thank you, Dr. Griggs. The excitement over the witches brings to a head the anxiety and unrest which has been disturbing these people of Salem. Dissatisfaction with a succession of governors, high taxes, a high cost of living, and lately rumors of war make it easy to understand why the distracted Salemites feel, as one put it to me this morning, that Satan is loose in New England, and why they're not surprised to learn that 150 of their own neighbors and even friends have been plotting with the devil against them and their government.
So join me next time when I take a classic old-time radio episode and split it up into 5 easy-to-digest pieces, right here on All Week Theater.